Ibrahim Traoré heard the news about the accident at the gold mine while finishing his morning briefing. He didn't know then that this was just the beginning. When he saw the truth, there would be no turning back. The presidential palace in Ouagadougou was still cool in the early morning hours, the day's oppressive heat yet to settle in. Traoré sat at his desk, reviewing security reports from the northern provinces where extremist threats required constant vigilance. 8 months into his presidency, he had established a routine: security briefings at dawn, economic matters mid-morning, diplomatic affairs in the afternoon. The rhythm of governance in a nation struggling to define its future. Defense Minister Kabore entered without knocking, a breach of protocol that immediately signaled urgency. "Mr. President, there's been an incident at the Busura mine," he said, sliding a preliminary report across the desk. 17 confirmed casualties, possibly more trapped underground. Traoré scanned the document. The Busura mine, operated by Goldtech International, a French-Canadian consortium, was the country's largest gold producer, accounting for nearly 40% of Burkina Faso's official gold exports. The report described a localized explosion followed by a partial tunnel collapse in the deepest section of the mine. "Rescue operations?" Traoré asked, already reaching for his phone. "Goldtech has deployed their emergency response team," Kabore replied. "They're requesting we keep military and government personnel clear to avoid complicating their efforts." Something in Kabore's tone made Traoré look up. "You don't sound convinced." The defense minister hesitated, glancing at the door to ensure they were alone. "It's probably nothing, sir. But my cousin works security at Busura. He called me directly, off the record. Says Goldtech officials were destroying documents before the emergency response team even arrived." Traoré set the report down, his military training kicking in. In his 8 months as president, he'd learned to trust his instincts. Something wasn't right. "Arrange transport," he said, standing up. "I'm going to Busura." "Sir," Kabore cautioned, "Goldtech has explicitly requested—" "They don't run this country, Minister," Traoré interrupted. "At least they shouldn't." Kabore nodded, a slight smile of approval crossing his face. "I'll have a helicopter ready in 30 minutes. As Kabore left to make arrangements, Traoré moved to the window, looking out over Ouagadougou as it awakened. The city was a mix of colonial architecture and modern development, of traditional markets and foreign-owned businesses. The presidential palace itself was a remnant of French colonial rule, its opulence a stark contrast to the poverty that persisted throughout much of the country. Burkina Faso was rich in gold, the world's fastest-growing gold producer for the past decade. Yet somehow this mineral wealth never translated into prosperity for its people. The equation didn't balance, and Traoré, a mathematics teacher before his military career, had always been bothered by equations that didn't balance. His aide entered with an update that added another variable to this troubling equation. "Mr. President, the French ambassador called urgently requesting a meeting before you depart for Busura." Did he say why? Only that it concerns diplomatic protocols during industrial accidents involving international corporations. Traoré checked his watch. "Tell him I've already departed. We can discuss protocols after I've assessed the situation personally." 2 hours later, Traoré's helicopter approached the Busura mining complex in the northeastern region of Burkina Faso. From the air, the operation was impressive. A sprawling industrial facility carved into the arid landscape, with processing plants, administrative buildings, and worker compounds spread over several square kilometers. At the center was the main mine entrance, now surrounded by emergency vehicles and personnel. As the helicopter circled for landing, Traoré noted the company's private security forces establishing a perimeter, keeping locals and press at a distance. His military aide pointed out another helicopter with French diplomatic markings already on the pad. "Interesting," Traoré remarked. "The French ambassador arrives before the Burkina Faso president." When they landed, a delegation of executives in hard hats hurried to meet them. Leading the group was Philippe Marchand, Goldtech's regional director, a tall, imposing Frenchman with silver hair and the confident manner of someone unaccustomed to being questioned. Beside him stood Jean-Claude Laval, the French ambassador to Burkina Faso, whose presence here confirmed Traoré's suspicions that this was more than a routine industrial accident. "President Traoré," Marchand greeted, his smile not reaching his eyes. "This is unexpected. We're in the middle of a delicate rescue operation." "Then I won't keep you," Traoré replied. "I'm here to observe the rescue efforts and speak with survivors." Ambassador Laval stepped forward. Mr. President, perhaps we could brief you in the administrative building. The situation is under control, but the site itself remains dangerous for those without mining expertise. Traoré noted the practiced smoothness of the response. Ambassador, I wasn't aware that mine safety fell under diplomatic jurisdiction. Laval's smile tightened. France has considerable expertise in mining operations. We're merely offering assistance to one of our corporate citizens during an emergency. Before Traoré could respond, a commotion erupted at the mine entrance. Workers were bringing up a stretcher. Without hesitation, Traoré walked toward it, ignoring the executive's protests. The injured miner was barely conscious, his face covered in coal-black dust, except for clean tracks where tears had run down his cheeks. A medic was administering oxygen while checking vital signs. Traoré knelt beside the stretcher. "What's your name, brother?" The miner's eyes flickered open, focusing with difficulty on Traoré's face. Recognition dawned slowly. "Ouedraogo," he whispered through the oxygen mask. "Musa Ouedraogo." "What happened down there, Musa?" The miner's eyes darted nervously to the Goldtech executives hovering nearby. Then he grabbed Traoré's hand with surprising strength. "Not Section 7, he rasped. "They said Section 7 collapsed. It was Section 12. They're lying." Marchand stepped forward. The man is in shock, clearly confused. "Section 12 is inactive, closed for maintenance." Traoré held the miner's gaze. "Why would they lie about which section collapsed?" Ouedraogo's voice dropped so low that Traoré had to lean closer. "The children," he whispered. "They don't want you to see the children." Before Traoré could ask more, medical staff whisked the stretcher away toward a waiting ambulance. He turned to Marchand, whose composed expression had slipped slightly. "I want to go down," Traoré said. "To Section 12. "Absolutely not," Marchand replied immediately. "The mine is unstable. We can't guarantee your safety." "I wasn't asking permission." Ambassador Laval intervened, his diplomatic veneer cracking slightly. "Mr. President, there are serious liability issues. The mining agreement between Goldtech and your government explicitly limits state intervention during company-managed emergencies." "Show me this limitation," Traoré challenged, "because I don't recall signing away my right to inspect a disaster on Burkina Faso soil." A tense silence followed. Traoré's security detail had moved closer, hands near their weapons. Goldtech's private security similarly tensed. Finally, Marchand forced a conciliatory tone. "Perhaps a compromise. We can provide you with surveillance footage from all sections of the mine. Complete transparency without unnecessary risk." "I appreciate the offer," Traoré said. "I'll review that footage, after I've seen Section 12 for myself." Realizing Traoré wouldn't be deterred, Marchand reluctantly arranged for a mine engineer to escort him. As they prepared the elevator that would take them underground, Ambassador Laval made a final attempt. "Your predecessor understood the importance of corporate autonomy in the mining sector," he said quietly to Traoré. "It's what keeps investment flowing into Burkina Faso." Traoré looked the ambassador in the eye. "My predecessor is no longer president, and I'm beginning to understand why." The descent into the mine was swift and disorienting. The elevator cage rattled as it dropped deeper into the earth, the air growing warmer and thicker with each passing second. Traoré had been in bunkers, tunnels, and caves during his military career, but nothing like this. A vertical journey into the planet's crust, where humans worked in conditions nature never intended them to endure. The mine engineer, a nervous young Frenchman named Girard, explained that they were passing through the main commercial levels where regular extraction took place. "Section 12 is one of our deepest exploratory levels," he explained, his voice echoing in the metal cage. "But as Mr. Marchand said, it's currently inactive." "Then there should be no risk in showing me an inactive section," Traoré replied. Girard hesitated. "It's just procedures." "I'm familiar with procedures, Mr. Girard. I was a military officer before I was president." The elevator came to a stop 700 meters below the surface. When the doors opened, they revealed a dimly lit tunnel reinforced with steel supports. The air was hot and difficult to breathe, heavy with dust and the scent of explosives used to blast through rock. "This is Section 8, Girard said, consulting a digital tablet. "The collapse was in Section 7, just ahead. We shouldn't go further." Traoré turned to the military aide who had accompanied him. "Captain, what section did the injured miner mention?" "Section 12, Mr. President." "And where is Section 12 from here?" Gerard shifted uncomfortably. It's further down and to the east, but I don't have authorization to take you there. Traoré studied the tunnel map mounted on the wall. It seems straightforward enough. We'll find our own way. Sir, I cannot allow... Captain, Traoré interrupted, addressing his aide. Please ensure Mr. Gerard remains comfortable while we inspect Section 12. The captain understood immediately, positioning himself between Gerard and any communication devices. The mine engineer protested but didn't physically interfere as Traoré and two security officers proceeded deeper into the tunnel network. Following the map, they navigated through narrowing passages until they reached another elevator marked Sections 9 to 14, authorized personnel only. Using the engineer's access card they had borrowed, they descended even deeper. The elevator opened to a tunnel noticeably different from the upper levels. The reinforcement was minimal, the lighting sporadic. This was not built for regular operations or inspections. They followed the markers to Section 12. The tunnel showed no signs of recent collapse or rescue operations. Instead, they found a heavy steel door with an electronic lock. The borrowed access card didn't work here. Break it open, Traoré ordered. His security officers hesitated only briefly before applying their combined strength to the door. The lock mechanism gave way with a metallic groan. What they found inside would haunt Ibrahim Traoré for the rest of his life. Section 12 wasn't a mining operation, it was a labor camp. In the cavernous chamber, dozens of makeshift sleeping mats lined the rocky floor. Empty food containers and water bottles were scattered about. Most disturbing were the small tools and helmets, sized for children. "My God," whispered one of the security officers. Traoré moved through the space, documenting everything with his phone's camera. In one corner, they found a logbook. The entries, clinical and detached, detailed worker productivity by age group. Children as young as 9 were listed, with their daily gold retrieval quotas. "They're using children to access the narrowest veins," Traoré said, his voice tight with controlled fury. "Places adults can't reach." They were exploring a side tunnel when they heard voices approaching. Traoré and his men concealed themselves just as a group of Goldtech security personnel entered, led by a supervisor speaking urgently into a radio. "We've secured the site," the man reported. "Removing all evidence as ordered. The president won't find anything." "Did you locate the missing workers?" asked a voice through the radio, Marchand's voice. "Negative. After the explosion, at least 15 children fled into the emergency tunnels. We're still searching. Find them. They cannot speak to anyone. Understand?" Traoré had heard enough. He stepped out from concealment, his security officers flanking him with weapons drawn. "I believe those children are now under my protection," he said. The Goldtech security team froze, then slowly raised their hands. The supervisor's radio crackled with Marchand's increasingly frantic questions. "Your boss will have plenty to answer for," Traoré continued, picking up the radio. "Mr. Marchand, I suggest you prepare for a very difficult conversation." Back on the surface, the situation had transformed. Word of the president's findings had somehow leaked, drawing crowds of locals and workers' families demanding answers. Many were parents of children who had disappeared after being recruited for special training programs by Goldtech. Marchand and the French ambassador were attempting to leave when Traoré emerged from the mine. The evidence was with him: documentation, photographs, and most damningly, 3 children who had been hiding in a ventilation shaft, terrified but alive. "Arrest them," Traoré ordered, pointing to Marchand and his executives. "Charges will include child exploitation, human trafficking, and criminal negligence resulting in death." Ambassador Laval stepped forward, outrage overcoming diplomacy. "You can't do this! These men have diplomatic protection under our mining agreements." "Show me where child slavery is protected in our agreements," Traoré replied coldly. "Your mining company has been operating a forced labor camp on Burkina Faso soil. There is no diplomatic protection for this." As the executives were taken into custody, Traoré addressed the gathering crowd. Many were filming with their phones, broadcasting the scene across social media. "Today, we have discovered a crime that cannot be forgiven," he said, his voice carrying across the stunned onlookers. "Children of Burkina Faso, forced to work in conditions no human should endure, all to extract gold that never benefited our people." He turned, gesturing to the mine entrance. The real explosion wasn't in the tunnels. It was an attempted escape by children who could no longer bear their captivity. And rather than rescue them, this company tried to bury the evidence. The night that followed was long and difficult. Traoré remained at the mine site, personally overseeing the rescue operations that continued through darkness. By dawn, 23 children had been recovered from various hiding places deep in the mine. 5 more bodies were found. Children who had died in the initial explosion or from injuries sustained during their attempted escape. Each child had a story more heartbreaking than the last. Most had been recruited from impoverished villages with promises of vocational training and good wages for their families. Instead, they found themselves virtual prisoners, lowered into the earth each day to crawl through narrow tunnels where adults couldn't fit, extracting gold from thin veins with hand tools. "How long has this been happening?" Traoré asked a mining engineer who had turned informant after seeing the children being rescued. "Years," the man admitted. "Not just here. Most major mines have similar operations, though perhaps not as extensive. It's an open secret in the industry." "An open secret," Traoré repeated. "And my government knew nothing?" The engineer looked uncomfortable. "Your predecessors. There were arrangements. Certain officials were well compensated to look the other way." In the days that followed, the full horror of Busura became clear. International inspectors discovered similar conditions in other gold tech operations across Burkina Faso. Documents revealed a systematic program of child labor used to access narrow gold seams adult workers couldn't reach. Most damning were the financial records. While Gold Tech reported modest profitability to tax authorities, their internal figures showed billions in undeclared gold extraction, smuggled out of the country through diplomatic channels. Traoré convened an emergency cabinet meeting. Some ministers counseled caution, warning of economic repercussions if foreign mining companies were antagonized. "These companies provide jobs," argued the finance minister. "They pay taxes, build infrastructure. Without them, our economy would collapse." "Jobs for whom?" Traoré countered. "Adults working in dangerous conditions for minimal wages while children are enslaved in the deepest tunnels? And what taxes? We found evidence of massive underdeclaration. As for infrastructure, they build roads to their mines, power lines to their facilities. The benefits to ordinary citizens are incidental at best." "Still," the foreign minister interjected, "we must be pragmatic. Western powers will not take kindly to any disruption of their mining interests." Traoré stood, ending the debate. "I didn't become president to be pragmatic about child slavery. Prepare for nationalization. All of it." 1 week after the Busura revelation, Ibrahim Traoré addressed the nation from the presidential palace. Millions watched on television and listened on radio as their leader, dressed in simple military fatigues rather than formal attire, spoke directly to his people. "Citizens of Burkina Faso, for too long we have been told that foreign companies bring prosperity, that we need their expertise and capital to develop our resources. Yet after decades of this arrangement, our people remain poor while our gold builds skyscrapers in Paris and Toronto." He held up a small piece of raw gold ore. "This was found by one of the children at Busura, a child who should have been in school, who should have been playing with friends, who should have had a future. Instead, he was underground, in darkness, extracting wealth for others." Traoré paused, letting the image sink in. "Today, I am announcing the immediate nationalization of all gold mining operations in Burkina Faso. Foreign companies will have 30 days to transfer control to our newly established National Resource Authority. They will be compensated fairly for their legitimate investments, but not for the wealth they have stolen." He outlined the plan in detail: how mines would be operated by Burkinabe engineers and workers, how revenues would be redirected to education, healthcare, and infrastructure, how transparent accounting would ensure benefits flowed to the people rather than to corrupt officials or foreign shareholders. "This will not be easy," he acknowledged. "We will face resistance from those who have profited from the old system. There will be economic challenges as we transition to national management. But the alternative, continuing to allow our children to be sacrificed for foreign profit, is unacceptable." The international reaction was swift and predictable. Western governments condemned the move as hostile to foreign investment. Financial institutions warned of economic collapse. Former colonial powers threatened sanctions. The French government was particularly vehement, recalling its ambassador and freezing Burkina Faso's assets in French banks. This unilateral action violates numerous bilateral agreements, declared the French foreign minister. President Traoré will find that nations cannot simply rewrite international contracts without consequences. But something unexpected happened as well. Neighboring Mali, Niger, and Guinea expressed support. China and Russia offered technical assistance for running the nationalized mines. Most significantly, the people of Burkina Faso rallied behind the decision with a patriotic fervor not seen in a generation. When Western banks suspended transactions with Burkina Faso financial institutions, local communities organized alternative economies. When threats of aid reductions came, villages pooled resources to support social services. A wave of national pride swept the country, transcending ethnic and regional divisions. The transition was not without challenges. Some foreign mining experts departed, taking technical knowledge with them. Supply chains for specialized equipment were disrupted. Production temporarily decreased. Traoré had anticipated these issues. He established accelerated training programs, bringing Burkinabe engineers working abroad back to their homeland with patriotic appeals and competitive salaries. He negotiated alternative supply chains through non-Western partners. Most importantly, he maintained complete transparency about the difficulties, speaking honestly to his people about the short-term sacrifices required for long-term sovereignty. 3 months later, Traoré invited international journalists to tour the Boussoura mine, now operated by Burkinabe engineers and workers. The transformation was remarkable. Safety standards had improved. Workers received fair wages. Most importantly, a portion of the profits now funded a school built near the mine where former child laborers received the education they had been denied. "This is what we call the Golden Palace," Traoré told the journalists, gesturing to the modest school building. "Not because it's luxurious, but because it represents the true value of our gold, the future of our children." A reporter from a French news agency raised his hand. President Traoré, Western economists predict Burkina Faso's mining sector will collapse without foreign expertise. How do you respond? Traoré smiled. The same expertise that created child labor camps? I think we'll manage without it. He gestured to the mine operations visible through the window. Look around you. The same Burkinabe who did the actual work before are doing it now. The difference is who benefits from their labor. Another journalist spoke up. The French government has frozen Burkina Faso's assets in European banks. How will you weather these sanctions? By remembering what truly constitutes wealth, Traoré replied. Is it numbers in foreign bank accounts? Or is it the resources within our soil, the skills of our people, our sovereignty over our destiny? The press conference concluded, but Traoré lingered at the school, watching the children who had once been forced to mine gold, now learning to read and write. The contrast was stark, from darkness to light, from exploitation to opportunity. A boy approached him, perhaps 11 years old, his face still bearing faint scars from his time in the mines. "Mr. President," the child said, "my father works in the mine now. He says that before, the gold made white men rich. Now it makes Burkina Faso strong. Is that true?" Traoré knelt to meet the boy at eye level. "What's your name?" "Thomas, sir. After Thomas Sankara." Traoré smiled at the reference to his revolutionary predecessor. "Well, Thomas, your father is right. But the real strength isn't just in the gold. It's in knowing that it belongs to us, and in deciding for ourselves how to use it." The boy nodded solemnly. "When I grow up, I want to be an engineer, to find better ways to get the gold without anyone having to go underground." "Then you should study hard," Traoré told him, "because Burkina Faso will need engineers like you." As Traoré left the school, he reflected on the journey that had begun with a mining accident report crossing his desk. When he had heard about the accident at the gold mine, he didn't know it was just the beginning. When he saw the truth, there was no turning back. The path ahead would not be easy. Western powers would not relinquish their control over African resources without a fight. There would be economic hardship, political pressure, perhaps even attempts to remove him from power. Yet already, something remarkable was happening. Other African nations were following Burkina Faso's example, examining their own resource agreements with new scrutiny. A movement was building, not orchestrated by politicians or driven by ideology, but arising naturally from a shared recognition that sovereignty meant nothing if a nation's wealth benefited others while its own people suffered. 6 months after the nationalization, production at Burkina Faso's gold mines had returned to previous levels, with a crucial difference: the profits remained in the country. New schools were being built, not just at Busura, but across the nation. Healthcare facilities were expanding. Infrastructure projects long delayed were moving forward. More importantly, a sense of possibility had taken root. Children who might once have been sent to work in mines were now attending school, dreaming of futures as engineers, doctors, teachers. Workers who had toiled for foreign companies now felt ownership in their labor, pride in their contribution to national development. In his office at the presidential palace, Traoré received regular updates on the transformation. The economic data was encouraging, but it was the human stories that moved him most. Former child miners graduating from primary school, villages using mining revenues to build water treatment facilities, young Burkinabe engineers returning from abroad to serve their homeland. One evening, as he reviewed these reports, his aide announced an unexpected visitor, Moussa Ouedraogo, the miner whose words had first alerted Traoré to the truth about Section 12. "Mr. President," Ouedraogo said, standing somewhat awkwardly in his simple clothes, "I came to thank you. My nephew was one of the children you rescued from Busura. He's in school now." "You're the one I should thank," Traoré replied. "Your courage in speaking the truth set everything in motion." Ouedraogo shook his head. "I only spoke. You acted. Many before you heard the truth and chose to ignore it." As Traoré watched the man leave, he thought about choices, the small decisions that ultimately defined a leader's legacy. The choice to investigate personally rather than accept official reports. The choice to confront powerful interests rather than accommodate them. The choice to prioritize children's welfare over economic expedience. When he had seen those children underground, there was only one choice he could live with. And though the path forward remained challenging, though Western powers continued their pressure campaign, though each day brought new obstacles to overcome, Ibrahim Traoré knew with absolute certainty that he had made the right choice. The gold of Burkina Faso would finally serve the people of Burkina Faso, and that was worth any price.